Serious? What about someone you knew was so creepy that you decided to distance yourself from them? I had a friend in college who I thought was just a friend. Always thought she was so cool because she'd do anything for anyone. Turns out it was just me and most of the stories were lies. She was prescribed painkillers for something and had no problems sharing them as we hung out and smoked often. We'd drive outside of campus through the cornfields and get high, listening to music and talking. One day she picks me up at my dorm and offers me a drink. Cool, but it's already open. Really, I thought nothing of it. I take a sip and think something is off. I taste the painkillers. Ooh, okay, maybe I'm paranoid. I ask her to take me home and she asks if we can stop by her place first. Okay, I think it's a bit strange. We walk in and it's literally trashed. Dishes piled up, a few bags of trash laying around. She starts going off about how much she cleans and her roommates just trash the place. How she just did the dishes yesterday and took out the trash. I'm seeing food right to plates. Trying hard to understand how 4 girls can make 3 bags of trash in 24 hours. No freaking way she was telling the truth. Then I realized how she was cleaning. Dropping it low, thong showing, flirtatious talking. Now texted my brother to meet me in the middle of campus and to keep heading towards her place if I didn't show up. Last thing I remember is hugging my brother and then I woke up the next day. She never tried to speak to me again but made sure to ask everyone we knew why I was mad at her to see if I told anyone. You're lucky I didn't, Jessica. If a girl is obsessed with horses, run far, run fast and don't look back. I think I've read a few times that you should always report this stuff because there's a decent chance you're not the only person she targeted. I once went on a date with this guy I met who used to donate blood at my work. We went to dinner and it went pretty well. After dinner, we decided to continue talking in his car. We started making out for a while and eventually stopped it since it was getting a little too hot and heavy for a first date. We continue talking in his car and this is when he decides to talk a little too much about how he really enjoys sex and BDSM. Anytime I tried to change the subject it would always go back to that. He then tells me that he especially enjoys knife play and would love cutting me and that he enjoys watching videos of people getting slowly cut. I played it off saying I wasn't into that kind of thing and told him it was getting pretty late and I should go. I haven't seen him since. She loved misery. I was driving her to work, lived on my couch, and she was sobbing hysterically in the passenger seat. She really hated her job and was an unbalanced person. We come across a horrible wreck, tears dry up instantly and she gets this huge smile. I've never seen her so happy. I ask what caused the sudden change and she starts laughing like a lunatic. Side-splitting giggles. She says that it looks like there were some fatalities due to the wreck and seeing it just made her day. I was pretty disgusted, creeped out. She was absolutely chipper for the next 2 days. My friend had her sister and her sister's boyfriend and child move in with her. My friend's house was the party house since her and her girlfriend had their own place while we were still in high school. Anyway, we knew that the boyfriend just got out of prison for what we thought was robbing a bank and we were in awe of this dude. We were still in our gangster, Scarface phases and thought he was just the coolest dude. Turns out, he was in jail for child molestation, never mind the fact that he was living with his newborn son. We were all like WTF and my friend group collectively stopped hanging out over there, at least until they both went back to prison. Not for anything having to do with the child, and the child was remanded to state custody. Dude a year younger than me in my sophomore gym class. Came out as gay and was basically ostracized. He was quirky and didn't have the best hygiene. Of course he was to be avoided. I decided to be nice to him. Offered to be his gym partner because I have also been bullied for being different. After a few weeks he turns into a nice guy and starts hitting on me hard. Gave off really rappy vibes. It was freaking weird and he admitted he lied about being gay to get sympathy. I avoided him like the plague. Next year, I'm in a trade school for my junior year. Homeschool goes into lockdown because dude stole a gun, shot his mom 6 times, and was making his way to the high school with a hit list. A girl I know likes to make people cry. Just that. She enjoys watching someone cry and she is trying constantly to lead people into it. I talked to her about it after a mutual friend lost his father in a car accident and she would start the conversation about just to make him cry. She said she didn't think it was a bad thing and that everyone does it. I told her she should get some help about it, but she said it's something she enjoys so it doesn't need to be taken care of. You should get some help with that. Nah, I'm pretty good at it already. Dude would often get drunk and strip down to his briefs at social gatherings. He's currently awaiting trial for trafficking child p. That escalated quickly. My high school boyfriend tried to convince me to complete a suicide pact with him so we'd be together forever. He talked about how romantic it would be if we died together. Because of other things he'd said, I distanced myself from him slowly. He legit scared me. He still kind of scares me even though I moved thousands of miles away and it's been years since we split. He's got some serious issues. My ex-boyfriend was similar. Anytime we would get into fights, he'd go into his closet and grab a gun and hand it to me. Then he'd tell me to just shoot him and get it over with. I ended things with him after that. I'm a student nurse. Have recently had a placement on a ward that takes care of elderly women. I had this one lady in her 80s come in and she had her son about 50 or so come visit. Apparently he lived with her. He seemed a little old to still be living with his mother, but overall, he seemed normal enough. Later that day, another member of staff told me that he had told her the day before that not only does he share a house with his mother, they also share a bed. The whole thing freaked me out. Apparently he lived with her. That's not so bad. She's elderly so he probably takes care of her. They also share a bed. Oh. Kid me learned from my mother that the girl down the block squeezed her hamster to death so I was no longer allowed over. My friends and I in college knew a girl on our floor in the dorms who purposely kept her case of chlamydia for months just to try and infect all of the guys that wronged her during her undergrad. Yo, that is a biological hazard. It's rare and all, but people with other health conditions can fall seriously ill from STDs. I used to play D&D in HS with a group of friends. There was this really uptight guy who would always be very excited about the prospect. I was the DM and convinced my friends to try him out for a few sessions. Turns out he was just socially awkward due to very mild autism. He was hilarious at the meetings and we all enjoyed having him around. Although he had a huge crush on my cousin who played and was very socially awkward about it. My cousin found him attractive and actually dated him for a while and slept with him. On Halloween we are having a game and my cousin is dressed as a zombie. Granted, she called it dressed as a zombie, but it was a zombie. He was acting very weird and behaving very strangely the entire game. We all noticed it and my cousin was quite concerned when he looked like he was going to just explode on us in anger. She walked around over to him and he freaked out and she just said, "Oh my god. WTF name." She looked at us, he is masturbating under the table. He freaked out and stood up without zipping. Walked out into the bathroom and came back trying to act all normal and wanted to continue the game. He legitimately did not understand the severity of what he just did. It was the saddest thing I ever did, removing him from group after that. He legit did not understand why we wanted him gone. Yeah, this is weird as frick. I used to be friends with someone who was legit delusional about a sports celebrity figure, to the point where I was so creeped out that I couldn't stand being around her. She committed fraud to get tens of thousands of dollars to move to the city he lives and plays in so she can go to every game. She started learning another language so they could communicate. He's not a native English speaker, etc. Even went so far as to live her life around the number he wears, i.e., the temperature is only ever set at that number, because it's his number. Thankfully it's something vaguely reasonable. She once held up a sign at a game and he saw it, and she was 100% convinced that he'd remember her forever. The sports figure is also married to a supermodel, OFC, and she was obsessed with the wife too. There were other awful behaviors, but she was so obsessed that I literally couldn't stand to be around her. I hope this chick gets some help. I think it is rather obvious that she is mentally ill. That goes way beyond normal interest in celebrities, and TBH I worry that it could escalate to something more violent and sinister. I walked into my apartment that I shared with a roommate. Right as I walk in, he had his girlfriend pinned down on the floor and her shirt was ripped. She's crying and they both look up at me. She gets up and takes off running out the door and he goes to his room. Not a word spoken. I kicked him out the next day. Don't know if it was a rappy situation or a domestic fight type thing, but the look in his eyes said all I needed to know. I didn't know the girl to reach out to her, and this was pre-Facebook everyone connected days. Police took a report from me but nothing came of it, assumingly because she didn't report it. Good thing you interrupted whatever was happening. I'm a 24-year-old guy and the only person I tried to avoid is the guy that hosted the foreign exchange students while I was in high school. He was a normal looking 50-year-old guy that was single and lived by himself, but he always hosted foreign exchange students every year, and I was usually friends with them. I'll give an example of some of the things he has done that creeped me out. First time meeting him, we were going to an amusement park with a German foreign exchange student. As I get in the car he says, "You're actually pretty ugly. From far away you looked good but you're ugly up close, I am just like a." That was the first thing he ever said to me. Later that day while driving there somehow they started talking about avalanches. And he said if we were driving and an avalanche was covering us and we were trapped, I would just frick you guys all in the butt. If I knew we were going to die I would hold each of you down and frick each of you in the butt. It was me, the German guy, and a girl all around 16 years old. They all thought it was funny. He didn't smile when he said these things. It made me insanely uncomfortable. He asked if I was a virgin and was making fun of me constantly about it that I was. Another time he randomly messaged me on Facebook and said, "Hey, if you ever come over and see me jerking off in front of the computer, just don't worry about it. Either that or you could join me." Then he asked me if I wanted to come over and watch movies with him, but he might be naked. That was the last straw. I blocked him on Facebook. The strange thing is this guy is loved by so many people. A lot of the parents at the school I went to loved him, and the teachers, and he was friends with a ton of people from my high school on Facebook. His sense of humor just didn't sit well with me. Pretty much everything he said made me uncomfortable. Legit grooming. There is no way this person hasn't done something illegal to another student. When it finally dawned on me that all of his friends were teenagers, most of them girls, and that I wasn't just so mature for my age that a man in his early 20s found me exceptionally fun to hang out with. I tried to discuss this with some of my girlfriends that he was friends with, but none of them saw the issue. I remember saying, what would a 21-year-old guy be getting from hanging out with a bunch of 13-15-year-olds, and feeling like the answer was just so obvious. How could they not see it? And they were all so offended at the concept that maybe we weren't just the coolest people alive. Amber even said because we're more mature than normal 14-year-olds. But we're still 14. Amber, why is he not hanging out with people from his college? So I just stopped going out with them when he was around. They eventually stopped hanging out with him after he dated and subsequently broke up with a few of them. Stuff like that makes my skin crawl now as an adult. If I ever have kids, I don't know how I'm gonna feel comfortable letting them ever leave the house alone. I knew a few guys like this over the years, and I had friends that were 14 or 15 girls with 18-plus-year-old boyfriends. It was only once I was an adult myself I thought, gosh, I don't even wanna speak to a 15-year-old, let alone date one, that I realized how creepy it was. But being a 15-year-old girl with an older boyfriend that can drive, I am British. That was super cool. Creepy Larry, not his name. Holy crap. My friend was dating this guy who had a pretty weird background. Parents did cult-y things. No one really knew where he came from, etc. I've never seen the warning signs of a serial killer so clearly exhibited. The dude would find half-dead roadkill, finish them off, and then hoist their bodies from trees until the flesh was gone so he could turn their bones into jewelry. I only met him once, and I'm not especially good at reading people, but I'm not an idiot. The dude made all the hair on my neck stand up. He had a really flat affect and didn't really seem to understand how to interact with anyone. Just sat in the middle of a party silently drawing a picture. I think it was some sort of face, but the features were all wrong and distorted. At one point in the party he brought out wooden LARPing swords and hit a kid so hard he passed out, and then didn't tell anyone what happened. Just left him there on the ground and went back to the party to keep fighting with people. He's not with my friend anymore but works at my local grocery store and has the coldest stare I've ever seen. Frick creepy Larry dude. What did I just read? A girl I was starting to be friends with at uni. She had a weird mannerism, but I didn't care. Then she started talking stuff about how pretty I was and how different I was and that I was different from other girls. I think she was in love with me. I didn't mind, but I am not gay so I didn't fuel it. Then I heard from somebody else she started saying that she wanted to grope me. That was creepy enough, but one day she sat behind me and let her notebook open. Another colleague read it, not out loud, and called me. On it was written a diary-like entry, directed for God, saying that she feels so sinful for masturbating and wanted to kill herself and that it was my fault and that I was leading her to heck. Like what the frick? Me and my colleague agreed to be quiet about it and distance ourselves from her. I think she left the notebook open on purpose, because that was too bizarre. I can't help but feel sorry for these kinds of people because of the conflict between their sexuality and religious beliefs. But whenever I get a hint of this internal struggle from potential partners, I get out of that situation as fast as humanly possible. They can be very dangerous, as I've learned from past experience. Amongst other things, he masturbated while voice chatting with me, not realizing I could hear the shakiness in his voice and how out of breath he was. Still I stayed in touch, only decided to distance him years later when it clicked just how many times I had forgiven how uncomfortable he made me throughout the years. This was actually rather recent, as we just moved into our new house not too long ago. I was home alone while my boyfriend was at work, and decided to brush the dog out while sitting on the front porch. A short, balding man comes hobbling over from a rather long way across the street, clad in socks and walking on hot gravel. He introduced himself, saying he wanted to say hi to the new neighbors, since the last lady was antisocial. I didn't want to invite him in, since I was home alone and didn't know him, so we talked in the hot sun. He told me how he had childhood cancer, and that he started smoking at 5 years old, and that he has severe bipolar and you shouldn't make him angry. The neighbors were apparently jerks because they didn't want him riding his ridiculously loud four-wheeler down the street at all hours of the night. We talked for 2 hours. All the while, he nursed a single cigarette. His speech patterns reminded me of a drunk, but I couldn't smell it on him through the intense smoke smell. One of his stories revolved around how he used to be an alcoholic, and the horrible actions he took. Apparently he stopped drinking, though you couldn't tell through the way he spoke. I was saved by the internet installer showing up. Thankfully, this guy creeped me out big time. Whenever I would try to end the conversation, he would move as if we were both heading into the house. A few weeks later, I was at the side of the house, tending to our new garden. This area had no windows or entrance to the main house, along with no neighbors. Guess who came stumbling over to me? Luckily, my boyfriend was home this time, and saw him heading my way through the front window. He came around the side of the house to introduce himself. The neighbor repeats pretty much exactly what he told me the first time, peppering in movies he likes, and his preference for Rottweilers. Then he threw in an extra added detail that I didn't hear the first time. He was a sex offender, of a 6-year-old. The neighbor claimed it to be a false accusation. I would hate to be in that situation, so I'd like to believe it was a wrong place wrong time story. However, he kept repeating the phrase, "You make one mistake," over and over. One mistake and it ruins your life forever. I barely touched her. The parents overreacted. The way he phrased it definitely didn't convince us. He creeped me out prior to him admitting this, so I can't exactly say he convinced either one of us strongly. We looked him up online later, and found a surprise. There were 3 sex offenders on the street, one of them being the previous owner's realtor. He invited us to go boating with him. He also sodomized a 9-year-old. I wonder why the lady who lived here before was antisocial. Hope you all get a big fence and protective dog if you all have kids. That's messed up. I feel like that kind of thing needs to be disclosed. He thought childhood sexual abuse was beneficial. A former dear friend of mine was in a Discord chat with my 2 other friends and just asked why CSA laws exist since it can only be good for a child to be abused. He was convinced that children need to be diddled in order to know if they are gay or straight and that it wouldn't be bad or do internal damage to a child of either sex. He said this in a group chat with 3 CSA survivors. He will never meet my children, which is a shame because we've been friends for 13 years, but I refuse to risk my children's safety just to keep a friendship. As a CSA victim, WTF. I almost bled to death from the abuse and he thought there's no damage. Frick him. I went to a conservative Christian college and my friend group included Anra. He was gay but we were fairly progressive guys, especially for a conservative Christian school, so we didn't care. Eventually, things started to get a little strange when it became clear he had crushes on a few of us. Still, we liked the guy, didn't want to be homophobic and brushed it off. It all culminated with him breaking into one of my friend's rooms. The Ras have keys, and hiding a camera in a sock with a hole in it. He hid the sock in the roommate's bed while he was out of town for the weekend and had it pointed towards my friend's bed. Fortunately, we found it and stopped being friends with him after that. Although it did suck that he betrayed our friendship, and the passive-aggressive Facebook posts and rumors he started about us were strange, we lived to drink another day. Anra hiding a camera in a sock is a real violation and is also very stupid silly. Reading these posts renews my respect for dolphins and other sentient non-human creatures. A girl I used to be friends with didn't have the cleanest of homes. I'm not a snob and I won't judge anyone, but the house was particularly dirty. This isn't the thing. I'm just trying to build a narrative. I went to her house after school one day and we went straight to her bedroom. There were at least 5 pairs of overly used knickers all over the floor. I'm trying to put this politely, but they were crusty and creased with actual skid marks over them and they were just out in plain sight. I tried to act like I couldn't see it and I left pretty much right away. It put me off going to her house for a while, but a few months later I returned with a friend. Same underwear on the floor, but more this time, but even dirtier. It's not really creepy, it's more gross, but when I think about the fact that they were openly left on the floor and she didn't care about people seeing it, creeps me out. We had this new dude in our unit and he was tasked to go to the motor pool with me. He didn't have a car so I was driving. I drove a coup. As I enter my side, this dude folds the passenger seat down and climbs in the back, closes the door and pulls the seat up. He plants himself right in the center of the back seat. I tried to get him to get in the passenger seat and he wouldn't. Okay, whatever. So on the ride to the motor pool he just kept saying he's a behavioral health specialist and I could come to him for anything. He kept emphasizing it. Whenever my eyes looked into my rearview mirror he was staring at me I avoided him at all cost after that. He eventually got kicked out when after he became unco and was soliciting his soldiers for sex. A guy I was renting a room from told me he abused his pets as a child. In tears as he was giving me a ride to my hometown for the weekend. When I got back from visiting my family, my pillow was missing, and he said he had let his mom borrow it when she was visiting, rather than letting her use one of the dozen that were his. I isolated all my belongings in my bedroom after that and moved out as quickly as possible. Had a once close friend put his hand down my girlfriend's pants and squeeze her butt. He also was doing the whole grooming thing, trying to score young chicks via MySpace and FB and Insta messages. Yeah, he's been doing it for a long time. After he tried to feel up my friend's wife in her house that he wasn't supposed to be in while she was passed out drunk, I stopped being wishy-washy about being friends and told him and all out friends I didn't want to be friends with this dude at all and exactly why I made that choice. Frickin' scumbag. He's trying to be a musician and has been pushing harder into the scene lately, so I hope he gets shut down sooner rather than later. I'm pretty sure a friend of mine is dating a sociopath for various reasons I can't go into. He is the kind of guy that seems like he read a book about how to manipulate people. Creepy as frick. He was flirting with me right in front of her, but not in an obvious way where I could call him on it. My husband wanted to kick his butt. No one in our group likes him. We just feel bad for our friend. Like anytime he would walk to go somewhere in the house we were hanging at, he would make effort to place his hand on my lower back or shoulder, even though there was plenty of room to not do that. He did that with everyone, even the guys. At the end of the night when we were leaving, he touched my husband's cheek. My husband told him to never touch him again, and he just laughed. He wants to work with mentally ill patients. He wants to work with a population of people who will either not have the social skills to know what he's doing and report it or won't be believed if they do. How freaking gross. My cousin always told me if we weren't related he would totally date me. He's lucky he has such a hot cousin. Would follow me around family functions and would find any excuse to hug and poke me. Started bring my serious BF around so he could meet family, and my cousin was obviously jealous. Told my BF that if he hurt me, he would stab him. Thankfully my BF is sassy and can handle himself, and would try to hug me. If he saw my BF put his arm around me, or be near me in general, he would quickly walk away and wait for his next chance to be near me. Now he avoids me because I always bring my BF around, and I'm more of a B to him lol. Always told me if we weren't related he would totally date me. The correct response would be, no you wouldn't. In college I was getting to know a classmate. He was awkward and twitchy, but I saw no reason not to be kind. We would arrive outside the classroom at about the same time, so we would chat for a bit. Maybe the 4th or 5th time, he was asking about where I'm from. I told him. I described it as an especially small town. He seemed skeptical of how small I'd said the town was, so he grabs his tablet, opens Google Maps, and brings up my town, several states away from our university. Mind you, when he brought the town up, I saw my house. Being an idiot, I pointed it out, so quietly I almost didn't hear. He whispered, "Gotcha," as he bookmarked my house's location. I honestly didn't know what to do and I went out of my way to never speak to that guy again. This is so exaggeratedly creepy it's hilarious. I'm so sorry that happened to you. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.